We have for this leading industry stalwarts to include Dr. Jayakumar, CEO and Director, Vizhinjam International Seaport Limited, Mr. Endarasu Karunation, Maritime Transport, Ports and Logistics Expert, Founder and CEO, UMK, Mr. Shehzad Attar, Vice President, Adani Ports and Special Economic Zone. The session will be convened by Dr. Malini V. Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University and Chairperson, the National Shipping Board, Government of India. Over to you, Dr. Malini.
Thank you, Ms. Padma. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this session on transshipment opportunities in India. About 30% of India's import-export is reported to be transshipped over foreign hub ports, with Colombo taking a large slice of the pie. Indian cargo made up as much as 65% of Colombo port's mainstay transshipment business in 2018, as per reports. The other ports being Singapore, Port Klang, and Jebel Ali. Transshipment, as all of us know, leads to additional logistics costs as well as longer transit times, affecting global competitiveness. Industry estimates show that this amounts to $200 to $250 per container unit as additional cost on an average for Indian shippers. And Indian ports are reported to be costlier by 30% compared to our counterpart in Colombo. To discuss this and more, we have an august panel of three professionals, Dr. Jayakumar, Mr. Endarasu Karunation, and Mr. Shehzad Attar. Let me introduce the first speaker, Dr. Jayakumar. Dr. Jayakumar is the Chief Executive Officer and Director of Vizhinjam International Seaport Limited, which is a deep water container transshipment project at Vizhinjam off the coast of Thiruvananthapuram. Dr. Jayakumar is also a member of the Kerala Maritime Board. He was selected in 2015 by the United States Department of Commerce for the Special American Business Internship Training in Port Development for Asian port experts held in Washington, USA. Dr. Jayakumar has also had a stint as technical advisor in Westport, Malaysia, which is one of the most modern seaports in Asia. Dr. Jayakumar has been conferred the Outstanding Engineering Personality Award by the Institution of Engineers in Kerala in 2016. Let us put our hands together and welcome Dr. Jayakumar, and we look forward to his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Jayakumar.
Mr. Endarasu, can you switch off your video? We can have Dr. Jayakumar.
So is my screen visible?
Yes.
No, not for me. No.
Sorry.
Is it visible to the others?
No.
No.
I think I have. Yeah. Is it now visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So can I go to the full screen? Okay. Before that, highly respected Dr. Malini V. Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University, and Chairperson of the National Shipping Board, Government of India. Dignitaries attending the session. Other speakers of the session, my friend, Mr. Endarasu Karunation, and Mr. Shehzad Attar, Adani Ports and SEZ Limited, delegates attending the session from on this domain, my dear friends. Good afternoon to all of you, and I wish you a very happy New Year. At the outset, let me thank the organizers of INMEX-SMM and Informa Markets for giving me this opportunity to speak at this conference. The topic is transshipment opportunity in India. And at the outset, I would like to say that India is a late bird in this domain, entering this domain to tap this opportunity. It's better late than never. As Dr. Malini Shankar has put it across, she has given a canvas of the opportunities before us, and she has given a very good introduction. about this. So I'll straight away go to what we have before us, and I'll talk about Vizhinjam Port, the present status and things like that. So India is one of the fastest growing large economies in the world, and maritime trade is instrumental for its growth, as you are all aware. So
But I think
I'm trying to, yeah. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. So now, see, though we, if you look at our India, we handle only, though we talk that we have so many ports and all, we handle only 1% of the world's cargo. Though we have, we are 18% of the world's population. So it is just a minuscule cargo that we handle. And this translates to over $718 billion of annual foreign trade. And carrying this major weight, our Indian ports are responsible for handling this trade. And now coming to the Indian port scenario, as we all know, 95% of the cargo by volume and 70% by value are through sea or through our ports. And our coastline, which is 7,517 kilometers, is studded with 12 major ports and 205 non-major ports, of which hardly 140 non-major ports are in operation. And these major ports and non-major ports are not in terms of the size of the ports, as you are all aware. Major ports are controlled by Government of India, and non-major ports come under the respective state maritime departments. And the cargo handled in last fiscal, 2019-20, are as shown here. And the main commodities that our ports handle are petroleum oil, lubricants, iron, coal, containers. And our total growth rate of containers is 12%. And since we are talking about transshipment of containers, so we look at the container trade in the country. And again, in the last fiscal, 2019-20, our country has handled 16.1 million TEUs, of which 75% is gateway traffic and 25%, that is around 4 million, was the transshipment or transshipped cargo. And if we look at the level of containerization, in India, we are only 22% when compared to the world standards of a developed world of 80%, which is a global standard. So we need to go a long way to achieve this particular target. So you can imagine the amount of container capacities and containerization that will have to be done in our country. So, and if the non-major ports now have started to contribute significantly towards future container traffic. If you look at the top 3 container ports, JNPT, Mundra, and Chennai, of which Mundra is a non-major port, they together control 75% of the total container traffic. And the ports in South India, which are largely Chennai, Kochi, and Tuticorin, account for 30% of the container volumes. But the sad part is that though we have so many ports, we rely on direct foreign services or the foreign ports for our transshipment requirements. Why? Because it is, as you are all aware, that with the due to economies of scale, there is the sizes of mother vessels are increasing rapidly, and also the increase in containerization also is bringing in larger vessels into play. So the larger vessels need deep water ports, which are lacking in our country, especially if you look at the places where the international shipping lanes are hugging. And the large mother vessels, they prefer to call at deep water ports, hugging the international shipping lanes. And majority, as a result, majority of the Indian containers are transshipped at foreign ports like Colombo, Dubai, Singapore. So this, as a result, there's a loss in foreign exchange earnings for our country. And the Central Planning Commission has estimated that about 1,500 crores we are losing as foreign exchange earnings as a result of transshipment happening in the other countries. Now these are some of the transshipment ports, that is including India in this map. And we can see that there are a lot of transshipment ports surrounding our country, whereas we don't have even a single transshipment port. And therefore, the transshipment requirements are met by other ports like Colombo, Dubai, Salalah, Singapore, Port Klang. And if you look at the Colombo port or Sri Lankan ports, they handle 75% of the transshipment cargo which belongs to India. And so Colombo port are still in the spree of expansion, looking at the growth of our GDP and our cargo movement. So, and if you see the position of Indian Peninsula, we are in a very, very dominant position in the Indian Ocean region, and where the major international shipping lanes pass through the southernmost tip of our peninsula. And on the other hand, we don't have a transshipment hub in the soil. So it is high time that we do a transshipment hub for our soil, so that we can save significantly in the cost of manufacturing, and also the savings to our shipping lines and to the port operations. And if you look at the transshipment opportunities, the first and the foremost is due to the absence of a transshipment port in our country, there's a potential revenue loss, and which is estimated as 200 to 250, as Madam pointed out, as a potential revenue per year for not having a transshipment hub in our country. And then the logistics cost inefficiency, due to the absence of a transshipment hub, the additional port handling cost is to the tune of $80 to $100 per TEU as a result of transshipment being carried out in other places, in other foreign countries. And then the another opportunity, which is that if you have a transshipment hub in our country, it can serve as a efficient hub for trade between the United States, European Union, Africa, and Asia, because the southern India is geographically well positioned as an efficient location for transshipment of the cargo moving to these places. And the next point is we can alleviate risk to the Indian trade due to dependence on foreign ports, and as a result, the cost of manufacturing also can be brought down. With 75% of in the country's transshipment cargo being handled at the transshipment ports outside India, it makes Indian industries vulnerable to cost increase, potential inefficiencies, and congestion issues, and create long-term risks for Indian competitors. So, and finally, it will propel the socio-economic growth and employment in this region. Now, this is the transshipment scenario in our country. Colombo handles 60% of the transshipment cargo, the transshipment requirement for our country, and so which is 25% of the that is 25% of India's cargo transshipment is handled by the Indian ports, and the rest 75%, of which 60% is handled by Colombo alone. Now, key factors for a transshipment hub are availability of deep waters. This is one of the paramount requirement for having a deep water transshipment port. at least 18 meters will be required to cater to the world's largest container vessels now plying in this route. If you look at the international maritime routes hugging the Indian southernmost part of Indian Peninsula, 30% of the world's cargo is transported or conveyed along this route. And now with the entry of very large mother vessels of the order of 24,000 TEUs and all, the draft requirements of the ports should be at least 18 meters. And the proximity to international maritime routes is also very clear. That is, the shipping lines prefer to call at the ports, which is very close to the shipping lines. They don't want to deviate from the shipping lines and take a long voyage to other ports. Now, hinterland connectivity is another success factor because the presence of a significant assured gateway is a big factor. This comes as a sweetener because if you have a gateway cargo, then the shipping lines would prefer to call at that ports, such deep water ports where gateway cargo can also be looked into, which will bring down the volume, the volume risk for the shipping lines. Then the cost economics of cargo logistics. For Indian transshipment hub to be successful in attracting traffic, it is critical to match with the other countries' rates, especially for our country, Colombo. We should be able to bring down the rates lower than that of what Colombo offers. And again, productivity of port and efficiency of labor is another important factor which determines the success of a transshipment hub. Then along with that, other ancillary services, if available, like bunkering, ship repair facility near the transshipment hub, a crew change facility, ship channeling facilities, emission monitoring, and these ancillary services would add more or would offer more attractiveness for the shipping lines to call at such a transshipment hub. So these are some of the key factors for the successful establishment of a transshipment hub. So here comes the importance of Vizhinjam International Seaport, and let's see why this port and how it differentiates or how it is different from other ports. So if you look at Vizhinjam, Vizhinjam is at the southernmost tip of Indian peninsula, which is almost central to the coastline. That is, out of the 12 major ports, 6 are on the east coast and 6 are on the west coast. So we are centrally located. And this, if you look at Vizhinjam, it's like the bottom end of the funnel where all the cargo, everything gravitates down to this particular location. And Vizhinjam is just 10 nautical miles away from the international shipping lanes that is coming from international Suez to Far East and from Middle East to Far East. And access to a large hinterland, because it's like a funnel, and we have a very large access to the hinterland, which covers almost 3 or 4 southern states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and another natural advantage of this location is that we have 20 meters, 18 to 20 meters within a kilometer from the coast, which is available, which can cater to very large vessels, even up to 24,000 TEU. Though we are designing the port only for 18,000 TEUs, the port would be able to handle up to 24,000 TEUs. And another natural advantage of this port is that unlike other ports along the east coast or west coast, we have very little littoral drift, which means that maintenance dredging is almost zero when compared to other ports. And this is a greenfield site where the developer has the opportunity to plan and design the port depending upon their requirements.
Dr. Jaikumar, we have 2 more speakers. May I request you to go through the important slides?
Yeah. So now, if you look at Vizhinjam again, another advantage of Vizhinjam is that we can cover the southernmost states, like up to Andhra Pradesh in 48 hours time. And recently, this is one of the largest vessels which came last year for crew change, which has come very near, within 2 to 3 nautical miles of the port, which demonstrates the water depths, the natural water depths available. This is again the international shipping routes, which I've mentioned earlier. So now we're looking at the project. So this is the coastline, which can be seen here with the upcoming port is shown here. And the critical component, or the main component of the port, is a breakwater, which is 3.1 kilometers in length, which is being built and which is delayed now. As a result, the commissioning of the port is also delayed. So this is again the master plan, just to show the master plan. Ultimately, the port will have 2 kilometers length of berth, which will be able to handle 3 million TEUs or even more. And most of the land required for the container yard is obtained by way of reclamation from the shipping channel and the turning circle. And this is the close-up view of the layout of the port. And in the first phase, we are building this port, which with a berth of 800 meters in length and 60 meters in width, with the container yard at the background, which will be of 800 meters by 500 meters in size. And this is the approach road to the national highway, and there will be a railway line to evacuate the cargo from this, connecting the nearest railway station. This is again the phase 1 development, the various phases of development. The road connectivity, it is 2 kilometers long, connecting the national highway. And rail connectivity, we have entrusted the Konkan Railway to carry out this work. It will be mostly a tunnel. Out of this 10.76 kilometers, it will be a tunnel of 9 kilometers. And the development is through a PPP model. And the state government has chipped in to construct the breakwater. To finance the breakwater, which is again built by the developer. And this is the first project to secure approval of Government of India from the point of providing viability gap funding, because this project was found to be economically unviable. So as a result, Government of India has stepped in to provide viability gap funding, which is 20% of the TPC, which amounts to rupees 818 crores. And the state also will put in the same amount of money. And we have signed a concession agreement with a private developer. And the concession period is 40 years, which includes 4 years construction period, which is already over, and the project is delayed. The concession agreement has been signed with Adani Vizhinjam Port Private Limited, and the project was slated for commissioning on 5th December 2015, and now it will take another 2 years. So by 2023, we'll be able to commission the port and able to handle the world's largest vessel plying now. The total project cost is estimated at 7,700 crores. And of late, the Maritime India Vision 2030 document, which was released in February 2021, has prioritized the development of Vizhinjam Port in the short term, looking at the transshipment opportunities for India. And they have committed to provide required support from the central government. And then they have taken up looking at the opportunities for setting up additional transshipment hub in the Campbell Bay in Andaman Nicobar Islands, and then later in Kanyakumari within 5 to 8 years' time. And at the same time to enhance transshipment volumes at Cochin Port. These are some photographs showing the progress of works. The entire area for the container yard was reclaimed, and still 30 to 40% reclamation is said to be over, because the breakwater has to achieve a significant length to provide tranquility for the reclamation works and for the completion of the balance works. So these are some pictures to show the progress of activities happening there. And other welfare, other measures which are taken up parallelly with the Transshipment Terminal project, is to set up a renewable energy park, a maritime cluster, a community skill park, and it's a thickly populated place with fishing activity and local fishermen. So we are magnanimously doing a lot of welfare measures for the local community. So with these few words, I thank you one and all for the patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jayakumar, for that comprehensive presentation. There are one or two questions which we'll take up if we have time at the end of this session.
Sure.
It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Ennarasu Karunesan to share his thoughts. Mr. Ennarasu Karunesan is a mechanical engineer with a master's degree in management and 32 years of leadership experience in maritime sector. This includes 22 years in the capacity of President, Director, CEO, and Chief Executive in the global ports and logistics system. He is one of the instrumental leaders in transforming India's container exempt trade. Mr. Ennarasu Karunesan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, respected Madam, Dr. Malini Shankar. I think my slide is visible to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam.
Yes.
And thank you, Dr. Jayakumar, and thank you, Sheshad, for joining along with me. And thank you, Ms. Padma, for providing opportunity for me to have sharing my knowledge in the transshipment port experience. First of all, the way how India has positioned for the last 2 decades and how it is going to look in the next 1 decade by 2030, it's something, there is a game-changing plan that's happening. As Dr. Malini Shankar as well as Dr. Jaya was mentioning, better late than never. So that's fair. When I hail from the transshipment port since 1990s, where I went to Malaysia in 1996, built transshipment port in Malaysia, and which has seen today last 2 decades from 0 to 12 million TEUs container ports, which we have witnessed in Port Keeling. Similarly, I would like to see how India has to position where in a very right, appropriate time, like India has changed the gear from import-driven economy to export competitive, which is really need of the hour. In that aspect, time and money, which is essential for to be export competitive. In that case, in that sense, transshipment is the must for India at this juncture. With this, I would like to just run through looking at I just wanted to, before connecting to transshipment, I would like to take you through how the trade and GDP and the volume of containers interlinked. So when we look at global trade, $94.93 trillion GDP across globally, all the countries put together, where India is looking at the 6th position, $2.95 trillion. So when we are looking at towards the 3rd largest economies in the next decade, we need to position our maritime assets to be world class. That's very, very important at this point in time. When we look at that as a GDP $94 trillion, how it is really impacted in terms of exempt trade. When we've seen that exempt trade globally, something like $35.49 trillion put together both exports and imports. And 2020 has seen $17.58 trillion of exports and $16.91 trillion of imports, where we have witnessed 812 million TEUs of containers have been handled across 900 global ports. This is where we have seen in terms of the trade point of view. When what is going to really looking at down the line this year, 2022, when the very recent studies states that global economy is rebounding and an estimated to 5.5% it was in 2021, which is going to decelerate to 4.1% in 2022, reflecting the continued flare-ups, diminished physical support and lingering supply chain bottlenecks, where really still economy is not really taking the speed at which it should have been taken. When we see in that kind of global economy, how it is impacting in terms of global trade outlook. When the global trade outlook, it was estimated to $20 trillion in the year 2021, which is expected to $21 trillion in the year 2022, which is also slowly catching up. When we have seen that kind of global GDP and trade, what is happening in terms of seaborne traffic the year 2019, where across global ports 11 billion tons of cargo being loaded, out of which containers have taken major lion's share, 4.6982 billion tons of cargo being handled. So which is where the increasing trend which is going to really looking at containerization is most efficient mode of transportation in the maritime sector. When we have seen that, how really it is taking in terms of seaside activities, the ships are becoming bigger and bigger. 2,500,000 TEUs, 2,500 TEUs container ships were considered to be largest in 1980s, and 1990s 4,000 TEUs. And today we are talking about 20,000 TEUs vessels and 24,000 TEUs vessels. The world is looking at mega ships. When that kind of larger economies of scale, how it is really impacting the landside activities, which is going to be the huge complex nature of system where the maritime trade is in transition. When we have seen the largest size ship, globally ports and terminals faster and higher productivity and environment friendly services have to provide to the stakeholders, and shipping market is getting consolidated and regional ports become more and more competitive, and complex transshipment port operations and stiff competition is in the anvil. So this when the ships are impacting larger size and it is consolidating and it is getting into more and more landside complex nature of activities, the ports also is evolving from mechanical oriented port to container port to EDA port, internet port, today smart ports. There is an evolution in the 5th generation ports are becoming more smart and transshipment ports. When we look at those kind of transitions is happening in GDP and trade and ship size and ports, now have you look at the way how the number of ports evolved and over the period of 3 decades, where the top 10 global ports, when you look at last year and 2020 actual numbers, top 10 global ports handle more than 250 million TEUs out of the 800 million TEUs of containers. And we have seen very clearly here, including Hong Kong, 7 container transshipment exim ports are in China, and Singapore is only and Rotterdam and Busan. These are the 3 ports, but balance all the 7 ports in China, which is where here clearly marking the difference, how the ports are evolved over the period of 3 decades. When we have seen that kind of evolution which is happening in the port industry in Asia, what is happening here when it comes to genesis of transshipment? Transshipment per se, it is like in the recent study states that 3.5 times a container is being handled from the first port of loading to final port of discharge. So that means a lot of transshipment activities which is happening across the globe. So shipment from Durban to Manila, no direct connection between 2 ports. That's where the transshipment has come into the picture. Containers for Manila are transported on 1 vessel from South Africa to Singapore and on a 2nd vessel from Singapore to Manila. So this Singapore becomes the transshipment hub. This is an example which I am giving here. So Singapore has become more and more hub and spoke, and it's becoming a transshipment mega hub in this region, which has seen over the last 5 decades. So this proves that the hub and spoke and relay network, these are all the two concepts adopted by transshipment ports. One becomes a hub and spoke model where the larger parcel size brought to the hub port and again smaller parcel size being distributed to the smaller ports. Similarly, when it comes to relay network from mainline vessels, skipping some of the main ports and moving to a relay pattern, these are the two network pattern which has been witnessed in the last 3 decades, in the last 4 transshipment ports in Asia and Southeast Asia region. So when we seen this kind of transition which is taking place, 1970, the early riser of the Indian industry, which is
Mr. Karunesan, I think we have to, I will request you to abridge this to the extent possible because we will run short of time.
Yeah, yes, madam. I'll take another, my time, another 10 minutes.
I think, you know, the session is to end at 10. Just shorten it because
Yeah, fine. So 1970, where Port of Singapore has evolved, which is today it's 37.5 million TEUs of containers, and it is handling something like more than 40 to 50,000 ships, and as being witnessed in Port of Singapore. Similarly, in 90s, Malaysia port, which is Port Kelang, which is today 11 million TEUs container port, and west ports of Malaysia started from 0 to 12 million TEUs of containers annually, and which is connecting more than 350 global ports. And Malaysia's PTB, Port of Tanjung Pelepas, which is the year 2000, it has started work functioning, and today it is 11 million TEUs of containers, which is in the Straits of Malacca. So all these 3 transshipment ports really evolved as major transshipment.
Mr. Dash, can you please mute your...
Which is happening there. And when it comes to India, look at the India in terms of where we are in transition. The economy is in transition. India is more on self-reliant, inward-looking, looking at import-driven to export competitive. Make in India to make for world. Exports, value-added exports. Raw materials to finished goods. So today India has changed the gear from import-driven to a $500 billion export competitive. This is something which is need of the hour for the country. Look at the cost of Indian logistics, which is 13 to 14% of GDP, which is incurring, unlike in other developed nations. And today, incurring additional cost on transshipment, $250 million today, which in the next 10 years, it will be double, even more than $500 million, which will be a 3,000 crores to 4,000 crores every year if we don't look at position ourselves in terms of transshipment. Here, as my fellow colleague speaker was mentioning about 2.8 million TEUs of containers being transshipped, out of which more than 1.8 in the neighboring country ports. Look at here, Colombo and Port Kelang and Port of Singapore. These are all the 3 transshipment hubs which have seen enormous potential. They become more and more transshipment activities. And the reasons for transshipment, we don't have a direct link between the 2 ports. No proximity to mainline shipping lines. There is no deep draft and accommodate larger size vessels. No capacity at the ports. Look at here in India, it's more on terminals, not as a container port, which is evolved in Asian countries, like a bigger port, which is 5,000 meter key length, where here we are talking about 300 meter key length. This is where the difference between the terminals and the ports. So here, India's transshipment opportunities, enormous potential is available for to put ourselves position in terms of transshipment. As here mentioned, the 7 various factors, determining factors for the key success factors for the India transshipment. So here we have to look at positioning ourselves very clearly to US to Europe, and you look at the Bangladesh cluster. So still we have an opportunity to put up our facility near southern tip of India. Similarly, when it to from Europe to China, again there is enormous potential which will save the cost to 2 to 3%. Similarly, from Africa to China, shipping lines, we can save more than 10 to 12% cost. And overall, when we look at, again, it's a deviation. Deviation is what's really important for putting up the facility. When we are in the east-west trunk route, sea route, we are positioned very clearly closer to that. We would take the advantage of the transshipment system. So that's where the INAM, which is near Kanyakumari, and Keppel Bay, which is near Andaman Nicobar Islands. So Virinjam, Kanyakumari, and Keppel Bay as the future, which is going to take the role of transshipment hub in India, which is really need of the hour for the country to mitigate the current losses, positioning TP ports for global maritime routes and transshipment ports like Cochin and also Virinjam, and transshipment hubs in Kanyakumari and Kampal Bay, which are the future. And India, to equip for these transshipment ports, plan TP ports to mainline shipping lanes, 20-meter depth is very essential to accommodate 24,000 TEUs vessels. Huge backup yard is needed, and ship productivity of 180 to 200 container moves per hour, and rationalize vessel-related charges. We can't have huge exorbitant vessel-related charges and deviation to take place, which you are not able to get our transshipment volume. So overall, when I look at here, India, it is better late than never. It's the time for India, where Asia has looked at Singapore 1970s, Malaysia 1990s, and 2000 port, which is port of Tanjak Palapas, and 2020 is for India to look at the future, where when we don't position ourselves, the future will have much more loss. It is not today in terms of 1,500 crores, it will end up in 5,000 crores loss annually, which will not benchmark in terms of our global competition, in terms of our export competitiveness. Thank you very much, madam, for this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karunesan, and do excuse us for having to, request you to curtail or, abridge your presentation. It's in the interest of time and the listeners. Thank you. Our third and last speaker is Mr. Shahzad Athar, who is the Vice President of Adani Ports and SEZ. He has over 15 years of experience in ports and logistics industry, and he has acquired expertise in port, shipping, logistics, and infrastructure industries. His responsibilities include supply chain operations, container port operations, global liner shipping, infrastructure development, and management of ports. Mr. Shahzad Athar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, madam, and thank you, Arasu and Dr. Jaikumar. I think I've explained the whole scenario. I'll just probably sum it up. I have just few points in terms of how does we really look at going forward with the transshipment. I think we have spoken in most of the conferences about the issues which India faces on the transshipment, but nobody really gets into a solution of this. So I think in Mundra, first of all, the transshipment is majority a shipping line network. I think we'll need to understand that it is not only the infrastructure which we create, and we keep creating infrastructure over capacity, but we don't look from the shipping lines perspective whether they can really do transshipment at a particular cost which is viable to them. So that's the most important. I think I would say we went lucky and we went good in terms of Mundra. I still feel that when we started Mundra and we asked shipping line to do transshipment, there was a lot of joke around that how does a ship goes into Mundra for doing a transshipment out of the Colombo. But because of our, I think one of the biggest attractor to come into Mundra for shipping line was the local cargo, which already was available, and shipping line had a view in terms of a long-term view of the local cargo there, and it actually evolved into their network planning. So again, shipping line becomes very important in transshipment. Although we have grown in Mundra, but the transshipment still remains stagnant overall. I think the southeast has been thoroughly ignored on the transshipment. I believe that we have enough capacity in the southeast ports like Ennore and Krishnapatnam has got enough capacity as of now to actually build in a transshipment network. And what we are seeing currently post-COVID, or I would say during the COVID period also, with the stress the shipping line has overall on the global scenario, I think you must have seen enormous data in terms of how the shipping lines are under stress of the supply chain today. Even ports, the top 3 transshipment ports in Asia, Colombo, Singapore, Port Kelang, remain stressed in terms of the transshipment. I think there is an opportunity for India here, subject that the shipping line looks at their network, which probably is today hard also for them because of the global stress in terms of their supply chain, in terms of no additional capacity coming in. That is, so Southeast remains an opportunity. The second biggest opportunity for us also is a consolidation of hubs in Bay of Bengal, especially for the Bangladesh and Nepal cargo. I think we will need to have a better maritime relationship with Bangladesh to ensure that India actually gets aligned with the transshipment of cargo, which Bangladesh is. It's a very key area for us. We had some issues recently also, in which the transshipment cargo actually has moved out of India into Colombo back because of Bangladesh issues. So we will need to look at that. Krishnapatnam remains one of the most prominent port in terms of the transshipment. However, we still lack in terms of the mainline connectivity. Again, the point of shipping lines being, again, the point of your port being under the network of the shipping lines. The Nepal cargo, I think Vizag did very well in terms of attracting some of the mainline service to connect into Nepal. It's a very good example of how a rail network can, from a port to Nepal, can actually attract transshipment cargo into Vizag. On some of the points in terms of the operation I wanted to highlight, which India should look at, is the customs view on the transshipment. I still feel the east versus west understanding of the transshipment on the ice gate is still lacking. I think SCMT should address this. We strongly believe SCMT should stabilize the understanding of transshipment on the ice gate basis. That needs to be there. Cabotage law has done a very good impact on the optimizations of shipping lines networking in India, especially on the upper west coast. And we believe cabotage law will have a long gestation to actually gain momentum, and India should keep that cabotage law remains relaxed. We do believe that in the next 2-3 years, cabotage will have a larger benefit for India coming up. Considering the capacities will go up, considering the shipping lines has made good revenue in the last year, so we still feel capacities will come back in the southeast coast for India to take benefit. So the cabotage law should remain relaxed. Competitive tariff rates is a very important factor, as again I said, shipping lines will look at the cheapest mode of transshipment. Custom intervention. As I said, this intervention on a transshipment has to be very minimum, and it has to be 100% digitalized. I don't anybody going as a white paper to a customs officer to allow a transshipment. That has to be completely digitalized. So these are some of the summary points which I thought of putting across, because these are very specific points related to the India trade. And Mundra is an example for us. We will keep creating more capacity there in Mundra, which will allow the shipping lines to work on the transshipment. Mundra also is a big example in terms of how we have made the rail connectivity. We'll hit this year 2 million TEUs of rail cargo in Mundra, which is the highest in India. That allows the shipping line to build more network there, and we believe that will allow them to build more transshipment networks also and create a hub in India for their transshipment. So this is a summary from my side. In the proximity of the timeline, I hope we have been able to cover some of the very specific points. Yeah. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Attar. That was an excellent summary of the issues facing transshipment and with specific reference to Mundra Port. There is a question on our Q&A.
Yeah.
There is a specific question for both Mr. Attar and Mr. Jaikumar. To Mr. Attar, it is, what is a percentage transshipment in Mundra port?
So we are today one of our biggest transshipment terminals. We have 4 terminals in Mundra. So one of the terminals today has close to around 10 to 12% transshipment, which remains in this number from the last 2 to 3 years. However, there was a peak in COVID period because of the vessel changes, but it remains 10 to 12%.
Okay. And the specific question to Dr. Jaikumar is, will Vizhinjam port actually work on a 100% transshipment model?
No, ma'am. This Vizhinjam, we have designed to cater to 85% transshipment and 15% gateway traffic to start with. But the gateway traffic, as the volumes increase, the gateway traffic also can increase, which leads to regional growth and to propel the economy in this region, socio-economic benefits in the region. So we are planning in that fashion. In fact, to set up maritime clusters to give impetus to the gateway traffic.
Also. Okay.
I would,
Yeah.
Can I please
Yes,
add
please.
to
Yes.
Dr. Jaikumar also? So I think one of the other point on the Vizhinjam also is the evaluation of FTWZ into any of the transshipment zone. Because if you see globally, most of the larger transshipment hubs actually provide extensive, FTWZ, free trade warehousing zones in those areas, so that can allow you to look at the local hubbing of the cargo, and it allows you to, for example, if you see some of the supply chains like Zara, the whole model is based on the port-based FTWZ, and that allows the shipping line to bring in more transshipments cargo to you.
Exactly. We are looking into it, and we'll be factoring this free trade warehousing zone, CFS, for which
True.
have plans to include in the maritime cluster, apart from in the land what we have given to the developer.
Yeah, all 3 speakers have mentioned about the future and the opportunities that exist on the Indian coast, and Mr. Attar has actually specifically talked about Ennore and Krishnapatnam, etc. There is a question on the Q&A again saying, are there any plans for dredging to increase the depth of ports to accommodate the large containers? Because that is one of the key factors which has been indicated in all the presentations, that you need to...
So I think we believe that the ports are all ready with, and I think in the last 5 years, port development program, most of the ports are equipped. On the west we are equipped with 16 plus meter. On the southeast, I think that the draft has gone from, I believe, 12.5 to 14.5 to 15.5 meter. So it is good enough for a 7,000 to 8,000 TEU ships to come in for a transshipment. And I think as and when the demand comes, I don't see any ports today shying away in terms of doing a dredging if there is a enough demand coming up. So it should not be a problem for India in terms of accepting. And as we speak now, I also wanted to update you all that on 26 Jan in Mundra, we'll be getting the biggest vessel which India has ever got, 398 meter vessel. So I think it should not be a problem for any port today, including major and minor ports, to get bigger vessels.
That's excellent.
I think what Mr. Shasad was mentioning, in fact, more than transshipment is a direct cost that can be brought to Mundra. Because Mundra, if you look at Mundra, it's at the top portion of India. You have a very vast hinterland where direct services can be held or with Europe or other places. So it is more than transshipment, it is a direct calls which they can make. I think there is a difference in the nomenclature. Direct services should
I just wanted to add one more thing, madam. More on the clusters. It's like Mundra consists of Mundra, Hazira, and Pipavav, those clusters. And similarly, when it goes to UAE, you have Salalah, Jebel Ali, those clusters. And when you come to here, South Asia, you have here Colombo and Vizhinjam, this cluster. Southeast Asia, again, Port Keelang, PTP, and Singapore, those clusters. So it is more and more clusters are getting formed, and that will act as an engine of more transshipment activities. So gone are the days from lanes Now it is becoming more and more clusters. So over a period of 2 decades, we have seen that kind of cluster formation, even in the transshipment ports. So that is going to be the way forward for the future.
I think there was another question that, some of the banks LOCs, letters of credit, do not allow transshipment as a condition. Now, how can this be handled? Any of you?
No, I don't have any answer for that.
Seshad.
Because
I think it's also from the bank's perspective. It's also the understanding of the banks. We have seen the banks also getting evolved. I have seen LC condition where it says that it needs to be shipped only through Nhava Sheva or only through XYZ port. It cannot be. I think the Exim Club, FIO also has taken up a lot on this, and I think the banking has involved. So you cannot really today say that your cargo can move on a direct vessel. Only. The networking has to be with the shipping lines. It's the transit period which needs to be guaranteed, irrespective whether it moves on a transshipment or a direct vessel. So the banks needs to be educated. I think the exporter needs to take it up with the bank.
Mr. Karunesan, you wanted to add something to this?
No, yeah, it's true. Today it's a free flow. There is no barrier. There is no trade barrier. So why such a thing when the container is allowed to transship it in the port, and you should not have such kind of barriers? It should have a free flow, as you said. It should have that.
Okay. I have just one or two more questions before we end this session. One is, transshipment inherently involves multimodal transport. You've mentioned trains, you've mentioned clusters, etc. And it needs to be seamless. What, according to you, is the role of coastal shipping network in this entire transshipment, large-scale transshipment that India is looking at?
No, coastal shipping can definitely augment or give fillip to the transshipment. Because if you have a really good coastal shipping network, you see in Hong Kong and other places, a lot of barge movements or small coastal vessels can take it as a feeder service to other smaller ports. So in that way, coastal shipping will also get a fillip once by setting up this transshipment hub at Vizhinjam or such deep draft ports.
To me,
and we have
madam.
Yes, sir.
Actually,
go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I have seen transshipment is a different business altogether. It's a volume-based approach, not value-based approach. When we have seen Singapore and South Asian countries like Port Kelang and PTP, actually it is a hybrid model would definitely will be beneficial to the port operator. When you see in that today Singapore 85% is only a transshipment, and PTP 95% of the volume is a transshipment. But Port Kelang, it is a mix, 65% transshipment, 35% again the origin, the OD cargo, which is again clustered around as you said, the coastal and feeder connectivities. So natural phenomenon where 60-40, 70-30. So beyond which then the model would be successful in terms of value proposition. When you are putting up the facility like $10 billion such facility, and you have to take out the money also. It is not just transshipment is a very, very thin margin value proposition. It's not easy just like going and putting up the facility $20,000 and you will not make money from that. You will be losing every container while transshipping there. Rather, this would be easier, ideal proposition for the country. So you have to look at more in terms of out of all value proposition for the country.
I think it also depends on the geographical.
Yeah. Sure, please go ahead with Dr. Jaikumar. Yes.
It also depends upon the location of the port and the geographical size. See, for example, Singapore, you can't have any industries and all set up there because it's a small place. So they have their operational efficiency and all. They have leveraged to get in more transshipment. So transshipment, that is the main economy of the country itself. So whereas if you look at Vizhinjam, another advantage is we are at the bottom portion of the funnel. So if you can provide excellent rail connectivity and road network, like the dedicated freight corridors and all coming up. This can serve within 24 hours. The advantage, see what is the advantage of Singapore? If you drop a box in Singapore, within 24 hours, that will be lifted and taken to any part of the world. Such a facility is available in Singapore or Hamburg or these port of Rotterdam and such ports. That is the service and the feeder network or connection. So for Vizhinjam also, we are trying to achieve that, but not through feeder vessels, but through an efficient rail connectivity and road network, so that we can service many of our southern states at least within 24 to 48 hours by taking the boxes and delivering it to the destinations. So in that way, this will be a better proposition as far as this region is concerned for our country like India.
There are two things, madam, I just wanted to say, as just to supplement what Dr. Jayakumar, in terms of location characteristics and operational performance. These are the two key factors important for the transshipment. As Sheshad rightly said, Mundra is in terms of location for the, again, West Asian system, and also the performance, how you are going to turn around the ship. Turnaround is the turnover for the system. When you don't turn around, because India ports for last 2 decades were facing problem with the turnaround. I think you all know that late 90s until 2000, ships were turned around 2 to 3 days for waiting time for get the berth, and 2 days, 3 days at berth. So normally it takes 6-7 days. But today it is completely less than 24 hours. Singapore handled less than 16 hours. Port Keeling and VTP 20 hours. So within 24 hours, if you are able to turn around the vessel, then you are benchmark. That's where here India, we are already in that system. So only now location and operational characteristics will do.
Thank you. This is the last question and I'll address this to Mr. Attar. If you read some reports as well as, both newspaper as well as professional reports, very often it says there is sufficiency or insufficiency of cargo is cited as a contributory factor to the suboptimal performance of transshipment hubs. What is your reaction to that?
Not really. I mean, if you look from an India perspective, with a 7 to 8% economic growth, I don't really see there is inefficiency of cargo. What has happened in India is
insufficiency.
Insufficient cargo, yeah. So I don't see that is a issue. What has happened in India, it is primarily because there are hubs created in the west and the south. So Mundra and Nhava Sheva being the largest ports in the west, and especially with the DFC corridor coming in, we have seen a huge amount of export growth in that part. So that's a structural issue, which I think the Northwest Industries also is aligned with that. The Southeast has been a bit, if you see, for example, Tamil Nadu has been one of the biggest industrialization hub. The rest all, as you move forward, the industrialization has taken a beating, across the states. So that is where is, I think the catch. And the next, we foresee the next biggest growth in the East Coast would be actually in Odisha, where the industrialization growth as well as container, which we are now trying to build up, the Dhamra container terminal. So I think the next 5 to 6 years will belong to that East Coast. And even the government of Odisha, look at the amount of industrialization they have been able to garner there. So insufficient cargo will not be a problem. However, as I said, network, if you have got the network from the shipping line, you can get into the transshipments.
Thank you, Mr. Attar. I think we've got a good conversation and discussion going just when, I'm told that time is up and it's lunch time. But I think it's been a very dynamic discussion. Thank you so much, Dr. Jayakumar, Mr. Ennarasu Karunesan, and Mr. Shahzad Attar for your time, for your inputs, and for sharing your thoughts. I would like to hand over the floor back to Ms. Padma.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Malini, for convening the session so very well. Thank you to our eminent speakers for substantive presentations and key takeaways.